Hello, bedtime thinkers, and welcome to the Bedtime Discoveries. I am so glad you are here with me tonight. In this quiet moment, as you settle down to rest, let's gently wander together into another small mystery of the human body. Tonight, we will explore the science of yawning, that slow, stretching breath that slips out when we are tired, or even when we simply see someone else doing it. Yawning is something so ordinary, yet so fascinating. And perhaps just by listening, you may find yourself yawning too. It is a natural rhythm of the body, and tonight we will look softly into its secrets. Before we begin, I would love to know where you are listening from tonight. Would you write in the comments your location and the time where you are? It is always wonderful to see how many people from different corners of the world are here together in this peaceful moment. And if you enjoy these calming journeys into science, please do remember to gently press the like button and subscribe to the Bedtime Discoveries so you can join me every night for a soft, sleepy adventure into the wonders of the world. Yawning is something you have known all your life. It is one of those small and ordinary movements that feel so natural, so deeply human, that you may never stop to truly think about it. And yet, as soon as I begin to talk about yawning, there's a chance that you may already feel beginning that slow heaviness in your jaw, the gentle urge to open your mouth wide, to stretch your lungs with a long, slow breath, and then let it out again with a sigh. It is such a curious action, a stretch and a breath all woven together. The mouth opens wide, the muscles of the face pull down and back, the eyes sometimes water. The shoulders may lift, and a sound, soft or deep, may slip out without your control. It is a gesture of the body that feels both involuntary and oddly comforting. From the very beginning of life, yawning is present, even before birth. Tiny babies in the womb have been seen yawning during ultrasound scans. It is one of the earliest reflexes, written into us long before we take our first breath of air. And after birth, yawning continues to travel with us through childhood, into adulthood, and into the later years of life. It is not something we grow out of, nor something we learn. It is simply part of being alive. Have you ever noticed the small rituals around yawning? Perhaps when you yawn, your arms reach out to stretch as well, as though the yawn is not only for the lungs, but for the entire body. Or maybe, after a long yawn, you feel a kind of pleasant relief, as though your body has taken a moment to reset itself. When described in the most basic terms, yawning is the act of opening the mouth wide, breathing in deeply, and then exhaling. But such a description, though accurate, feels incomplete, because yawning is not just a breath. It is a rhythm, an expression, a signal, and perhaps even a mystery. It is something so ordinary, yet so layered with meaning, that scientists have studied it for centuries. And even now, even after centuries of curiosity, of experiments, and of observation, we still do not fully know why we yawn. But before we look at those theories, before we wander into the deeper mysteries, it is worth staying here in this simple space, just watching the gesture itself, just noticing what it feels like in the body, what it means in our daily lives, and how it connects us to one another. Perhaps you have yawned already while listening. And if you have, it is not surprising, because yawning has a way of spreading, like a ripple on the surface of a quiet pond. But we will come to that part later. For now, let us linger on what yawning truly is, in its most familiar and human form. When a yawn begins, it is almost impossible to stop it. You may try to close your mouth or hold it back, but the reflex is stronger than your will. The jaw stretches wide, the mouth opens, and the breath pulls in deeply, as though your lungs are being gently filled by an unseen hand. Inside the body, many small events happen all at once. The muscles of face and throat widen. The tongue may press against the lower teeth or curl upward slightly. The diaphragm, that large muscle beneath the lungs, contracts and pulls downward, making space for the chest to expand. Air flows in, cool and steady, filling the lungs, and then, as the muscles relax again, the breath is released in a long, slow exhale, sometimes silent, sometimes with a sigh. The average yawn lasts only a few seconds, perhaps 4 or maybe a little longer, but in those few seconds, so many parts of the body are involved. It is not simply breathing in and out. It is an orchestration of muscle, air, and reflex. Even the ears feel it, as the small tubes inside them adjust to the pressure change caused by the yawn. That is why yawning sometimes helps to pop your ears when you're on an airplane or at a high altitude. Interestingly, yawning is one of those rare movements that crosses the boundary between voluntary and involuntary action. You can yawn on purpose if you decide to, but often it arises without your choice. It sneaks up on you, a reflex from somewhere deep in the nervous system. It is the body's quiet reminder that some hidden process is at work. Scientists believe the reflex of yawning comes from very old parts of the brain, regions that control survival instincts and automatic behaviors. This means yawning is not a recent invention of humans, but something ancient, perhaps carried through countless generations of life on Earth. It has been with us for as long as we have been human, and even before. There's also something almost ceremonial in the act. Think of a long day when you're finally at rest, and a yawn rises naturally. It feels like a soft closure of one chapter, and the beginning of another, like a signal to the body, saying, it is time now to slow down, to let go, to drift into rest. And perhaps that is why yawning has been described in so many ways, as a sign of fatigue, a gesture of boredom, a reflex of oxygen, or a whisper of empathy. Each description captures part of the truth, but never all of it, for yawning is both simple and complex, familiar and mysterious. A single act, and yet 1,000 meanings. Yawning follows us through the rhythms of our day. In the early morning, as the sun rises, you may yawn while waking, stretching out your arms, letting the body slowly return from the stillness of sleep. In the quiet afternoon, when the world seems slower and softer, a yawn may drift across your lips as you sit, thinking or reading. And at night, as you prepare for rest, yawns may come more frequently, like little waves carrying you toward the shore of sleep. But yawning is not only about sleepiness. It can appear in moments of waiting, of listening, or even of calm reflection. A student in class may yawn, not out of disrespect or boredom, but simply because the body asks for it. A traveler on a bus may yawn, while gazing out at the passing world. Even in moments of happiness or excitement, a yawn may slip out unexpectedly. There is also something social about yawning. When you yawn in front of another person, it is not hidden. It is visible, open, almost vulnerable. And yet, we do it freely, without shame, without hesitation. It is a gesture so natural that we accept it in others without question. Across cultures, yawning has been noticed and described for thousands of years. Ancient philosophers, poets, and healers all wrote about yawning, wondering what it meant and why it happened. In some traditions, yawning was seen as a release of energy. In others, it was thought to guard against spirits entering the body. In every case, it was recognized as something more than just a breath. It was seen as a meaningful act. And even now, as we sit together in this quiet moment, talking softly about yawns, there's a chance that you, too, have yawned at least once, perhaps more than once. It is as though the very act of speaking about yawns awakens a reflex within us, a reminder how deeply it is written into the body, into the mind, into the rhythm of being alive. So here we are at the end of the first step of our journey. We now know that yawning is more than just an open mouth or a deep breath. It is an ancient reflex, a small performance of the body, an everyday companion that follows us from birth until our very last days. And though it is so familiar, so ordinary, it is also the doorway into deeper mysteries. Why we do it, what it means, and how it connects us to the world. And that is where we will go in the next part of our gentle exploration. Yawning has always been with us. So ordinary, so frequent, so woven into the rhythm of daily life, and yet so puzzling. From the earliest days of human thought, people have asked themselves, why do we yawn? In ancient Greece, philosophers like Hippocrates noticed yawns in patients and wondered what purpose they served. He believed yawning was a way for the body to release bad air and to bring in something fresher, something cleaner, a kind of natural ventilation for the soul. Others saw yawning as a release of spirit, a protective gesture, or even a sign that the heart and mind were preparing for change. Across the centuries, explanations have shifted from spiritual beliefs to poetic interpretations to scientific models. But the central question has never fully disappeared. One of the oldest ideas is that yawning helps regulate the air we breathe, that when we feel low in energy or when the air grows stale, yawning pulls in a rush of oxygen to refresh the body. For many years, this was the most popular theory. A yawn as a little sip of air for a weary mind. But as science advanced, researchers began to notice that yawning is not so simple. Sometimes we yawn in rooms where the air is perfectly fresh. Sometimes we yawn even while breathing deeply. And sometimes we yawn at moments when oxygen levels are not low at all. This led scientists to search for new answers. And what they found was that yawning, like many natural reflexes, may not serve only one purpose. It may serve many overlapping subtle roles. A cooling system for the brain, a reset button for attention, a social signal for connection, and perhaps something more mysterious still. The question of why we yawn does not have one single answer, but instead a collection of gentle explanations, each offering us a different way to see the same ordinary act. And as we drift through these theories tonight, perhaps you will notice yourself yawning more and more, not because of oxygen or temperature or fatigue, but simply because yawning is contagious, a reflex of empathy and a companion of thought itself. And maybe that in itself is an answer. One of the most fascinating theories of yawning is that it may be a natural cooling system for the brain. Think a computer, working for hours, gradually warming with effort. It needs a fan to cool it, to keep it from overheating. Some scientists suggest the brain has something similar hidden in the yawn. When you yawn, cool air flows in. The movement of the jaw and the stretching of the throat encourage blood flow around the head and face. This circulation, combined with the intake of air, may help reduce the brain's temperature slightly, bringing it back to balance, keeping it sharp, and preventing fatigue from clouding your thoughts. Studies have shown that people tend to yawn more in warmer environments, and less when the air is cooler. Even small changes in temperature around the head seem to affect yawning. For example, Holding a cold pack near the forehead can sometimes reduce the urge to yawn, while being in a warm room may increase it. This theory paints a gentle picture. Every yawn, a tiny breeze across the mind, a refreshing breath, a soft wave of coolness washing through the brain, keeping it from growing sluggish, keeping awake, and perhaps helping it shift smoothly between states of alertness and rest. Imagine late at night, when you are drifting towards sleep, the brain begins to warm with drowsiness, and yawn rises, carrying with it a breath of coolness, preparing you for the next stage of rest. Or in the middle of the day, as your focus drifts and your thoughts grow heavy, a yawn may appear, clearing the fog and giving your brain a moment of renewal. Not everyone agrees on this theory. Some scientists say the cooling effect may be too small to matter. Others suggest it is one piece of a larger puzzle. But even so, it is a comforting thought that such a simple reflex could be the body's way of keeping the mind fresh, a fan for the brain, hidden in plain sight, carried in a single ordinary yawn. Another explanation for yawning is that it serves as a kind of reset button, a gentle signal from the body, reminding us to shift focus, to realign our attention, to prepare for a change in state. Have you noticed how yawns often appear at transitions? Before sleep or upon waking? During a long task, when your mind drifts and just before you bring it back? Before a stressful event or in moments of anticipation? Yawning seems to arrive when the brain is moving from one rhythm into another. Some researchers suggest that yawning may act as a neural reset, a way to shake off the fog of one state and prepare for another. In this sense, yawning is not about oxygen or even cooling, but about readiness. Think of an athlete before a race, standing at the starting line, taking a deep yawn just before the sound of the gun, or a musician preparing to step on stage, yawning quietly in the wings. It is as if the body is saying, now, I must be awake, I must be present, I must be ready. In daily life, you may feel the same. In the classroom, when focus fades, a yawn arrives, and afterwards, you feel a little more alert. At your desk, when the afternoon feels heavy, a yawn breaks through, a reminder to shift, to reset, to reawaken. Yawning, then, may be less about air and more about awareness, less about fatigue and more about balance. It may be the body's way of keeping us aligned, keeping us tuned, keeping us moving through the subtle transitions of life. And as you listen to this now, perhaps you feel a yawn rising within you, not because you are bored or tired, but because your body senses a gentle shift from listening to reflecting, from thought to stillness, from wakefulness to the edge of dreams. So why do we yawn? The truth is there is no single reason. Yawning may cool the brain. It may refresh our attention. It may carry air. It may signal empathy. Perhaps it is all of these, woven together in one ancient reflex, a reminder that even in the simplest gestures, the body holds mysteries far deeper than we imagine. When we think about yawning, it is easy to imagine it as something simple, something small, just an open mouth, a deep breath and a sigh. But hidden beneath this gentle gesture is a story that reaches deep into the brain, into the oldest parts of our nervous system. You see, yawning is not a decision. It is not something we consciously create. It comes from places in the brain that work quietly, automatically, beneath our awareness. Scientists believe the reflex begins in the hypothalamus, a small, almond-sized structure nestled at the very center of the brain. The hypothalamus is like a conductor, guiding rhythms such as hunger, thirst, body temperature, and sleep. And yawning, too, seems to be part of its orchestra, from the hypothalamus, signals travel through the brainstem. The brainstem is one of the oldest regions of the nervous system, sometimes called the reptilian brain, because it has been with living creatures for hundreds of millions of years. Here, automatic actions are controlled. Breathing, heart rate, blinking, swallowing, and yawning. So when a yawn begins, it is not a conscious thought, but a signal moving quietly through these deep pathways. The brainstem activates nerves that stretch to the jaw, the throat, the lungs. Muscles begin to move. The chest expands. Air flows in, and the yawn unfolds as a cascade, like dominoes falling in perfect rhythm. It is remarkable, isn't it, that such a simple, everyday act is orchestrated by some of the most ancient and vital regions of the brain. Yawning, then, is more than a gesture. It is a whisper from the body's core, from the hidden places where life is managed without effort, without thought. And because it arises from such deep regions, yawning may serve purposes we do not yet fully understand. It may be a regulator, balancing states of the nervous system. It may be a messenger, reminding us to cool, to reset, to connect. It may be an ancient tool, passed down through countless generations of life. When you next yawn, you can imagine that the signal began in your hypothalamus, spread through your brainstem, and rippled outward through nerves and muscles. A chain reaction of the nervous system, wrapped up in one small, familiar moment, so ordinary yet so profound. If yawning is a reflex guided by the brain, then the chemicals of the brain, the neurotransmitters, are the language through which it speaks. And scientists have discovered that several important neurotransmitters seem to play a role in yawning. One of the strongest links is with dopamine. Dopamine is often called the motivation molecule, connected to movement, reward, and alertness. When dopamine activity rises in the brain, yawning often follows. Experiments with animals have shown that increasing dopamine levels can trigger more yawns. It suggests that yawning may be tied to the brain cycles of arousal and alertness, perhaps a signal that the brain is adjusting, balancing itself between states of rest and wakefulness. Another important chemical is acetylcholine. This neurotransmitter helps regulate muscle movement and the cycles of sleep and wake. When acetylcholine activity shifts, yawning can appear, as though the body is gently preparing for a new state. Serotonin, too, is connected with yawning. Serotonin is often linked to mood, calmness, and the body's internal clock. Changes in serotonin levels, especially in relation to light and darkness, may influence how often we yawn. This could explain why yawns arrive at dawn and dusk, when our body's rhythms are shifting. And there is also oxytocin. Oxytocin is sometimes called a bonding hormone because it deepens feelings of connection, empathy, and closeness. Some researchers believe yawning may be influenced by oxytocin, helping explain why yawns spread more easily between people who feel connected. All of this reveals something beautiful, that yawning is not random, but carefully woven into the brain's chemistry. It is shaped by dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, oxytocin, each playing its part like instruments in a quiet symphony. Together, they guide when a yawn will rise and when it will pass. When you yawn, then you can imagine it is not just a breath, but a reflection of the hidden chemistry within you, a moment when molecules shift, signals cross, and the brain resets its balance. It is a gentle reminder that beneath every simple action, there is a vast, unseen world at work. Because yawning is linked to the brain's deepest structures, scientists have discovered it can serve as a window into brain health. Doctors sometimes study yawning patterns to understand neurological conditions. For example, excessive yawning can appear in disorders that affect the brainstem, or in cases where dopamine systems are disrupted, it can even signal the effects of certain medicines, or the body's response to fatigue, stress, or temperature changes. But beyond medicine, yawning also reveals something about the mind itself. When we yawn in response to others, contagious yawning, it reflects empathy, social connection, and the mirroring of brain activity between people. When we yawn in solitude, it reflects internal balance, the rhythms of neurotransmitters, the cooling of the brain, the reset of attention. Some researchers believe yawning may even act as a small diagnostic tool for the body itself, like a quiet check-in, a natural system update triggered by the brain when needed. It is fascinating to think that each yawn you take is both personal and universal. It is shaped by your chemistry, your state of mind, your environment, and yet it is also shared by every other human and by countless animals across the earth. It is a gesture that unites us across brains, across species, across time itself. So the next time you feel a yawn rising, know that it is not just a sign of sleepiness, nor only a reflex of the lungs. It is a message from deep within your brain, shaped by chemistry, carried by ancient structures, and shared across the entire animal kingdom. It is a small reminder of the hidden intelligence within you, the quiet work of the brain, keeping balance, cooling itself, shifting states, and reaching outward in connection. And so, we see that yawning is not only an act of the body, it is an act of the brain, a secret gesture, half reflex and half communication, stretching back through the deepest layers of our biology. For many centuries, people believed they understood why yawning happens. It seemed so obvious, so simple. Yawning must be about air. The idea was first written about in ancient Greece by Hippocrates, the great physician, nearly 2,500 years ago. He observed patients in his care. Notice how yawns often came before fever broke, or before a shift in health. He wrote that yawning was like the body's way of releasing bad air and drawing in fresh air, as though the lungs were a fireplace, opening wide to let the smoke escape and the fresh breeze enter. This view lasted for centuries. In fact, until quite recently, the oxygen theory was considered the most natural explanation. When you yawn, you are pulling in a large breath of air. Surely that means the body is asking for more oxygen. Perhaps some thought yawning is the body's emergency breath, a way of clearing stale air, refreshing the lungs, and feeding the brain with new energy. Even today, many people casually explain yawning this way, that when you are tired, your body is low in oxygen, and so you yawn to restore balance. It is a comforting thought because it makes sense in a simple way. Breathing is life. Yawning is just extra breathing. But science, as it often does, looked closer, and what scientists found was that the story of yawning and oxygen is not so straightforward. In the 20th century, researchers began to study yawning more carefully. They placed volunteers in rooms with varying levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide, carefully measuring how often they yawned. If the oxygen theory were true, then yawns should have increased when oxygen was low, or when carbon dioxide was high. But the results showed something different. Even when the air was perfectly fresh and oxygen-rich, people still yawned. Even when oxygen levels were adjusted, yawning did not reliably increase or decrease. One famous experiment exposed participants to air with lower oxygen content, and later to air with higher carbon dioxide content. What happened? The participants began breathing more quickly, as the body naturally does to adjust, but yawning did not change significantly. It seemed yawning was not the emergency oxygen, response many believed it to be. Other studies with animals showed the same pattern. Even when oxygen was plentiful, yawns appeared, sometimes more often than expected, and when oxygen was restricted, the animals increased their breathing rate. But their yawns did not follow in a predictable way. These results puzzled scientists. If yawning is not about oxygen, then why does it involve such a deep, stretching breath? Why does it feel so refreshing, as though the body is taking in something new? The answer may be that yawning does bring air into the lungs, but its purpose is not only about oxygen. The act of yawning may serve multiple overlapping roles: cooling the brain, resetting attention, signaling to others. The oxygen intake may be a side effect rather than the main reason. And so, the oxygen theory, while beautiful and simple, began to fade, not because it was completely wrong, but because it was incomplete. Even though modern science has shown yawning is not only about oxygen, the story still carries a kind of truth, because when you yawn, you do feel a rush of freshness. Your chest expands, your lungs stretch, your breath deepens, and in that moment, even if oxygen levels do not change much, you feel a gentle renewal, a lightness in your body. Perhaps this is why the oxygen theory has stayed in our collective imagination for so long. It feels true. It matches the sensation of yawning itself. And maybe in some way it is true, just not in the way we once believed. Because yawning may not be about rescuing oxygen levels, but it may still be about breathing in a way that resets the body. It is not about survival, but about rhythm, not about desperation, but about balance. When you yawn, you are reminded of the breath itself, the gentle cycle of air that moves through you moment after moment, keeping you alive. A yawn is like a pause in that cycle, a deeper breath that says, remember, here is the air, here is the life flowing in and out. Think of how often yawns come when we are tired or restless. The breath slows, the body grows still, and then suddenly a yawn brings a long, deep breath, as if reawakening the lungs, stretching them fully, inviting life back into the rhythm. And perhaps that is why yawns feel so satisfying. They are not about a desperate need for oxygen, but about a gentle reminder of the breath, a soft renewal of the cycle of air, a moment of connection with life itself. So, while the oxygen theory may not be the full story, it leaves us with something poetic. Yawning is a breath beyond air, a breath that refreshes not only the lungs, but the spirit, not only the body, but the mind. And as you listen now, you may feel that gentle urge rise within you, to open your mouth, to breathe deeply, to let go, a reminder that even the simplest breath can be profound, that every yawn is both science and mystery, both reflex and poetry. Yawning has a secret power. Unlike most of our reflexes, yawning can leap from one person to another. It is one of the most contagious behaviors known to humanity. You have seen this yourself. Someone across the room yawns, and almost without thinking, you feel it stir inside you. Your jaw loosens, your lungs prepare, and within seconds, you too are yawning. It is as if yawning is a quiet whisper passed between bodies, a message written not in words but in breath. This mysterious effect has fascinated people for centuries. In the Middle Ages, yawns were sometimes thought to spread like tiny spirits, moving invisibly from mouth to mouth. In folklore, it was said that when you yawn, you open a door through which the soul might escape, and so people would cover their mouths to keep it safe. Even today, that habit remains, though now it is more about politeness. But the real mystery is deeper. Why should yawning be contagious at all? Why does the body echo this strange reflex when it sees in another? Most reflexes, like sneezing or blinking, do not pass between people, yet yawning does. This suggests yawning is not only about the body, but also about the mind, about connection, about something shared. Modern science has shown that contagious yawning is closely linked to empathy, the ability to feel what another is feeling, to mirror their inner state. Researchers have observed that when people see a friend or loved one yawn, they are far more likely to yawn in response, compared to when they see a stranger. In fact, the closer the bond, the more likely the yawn will be shared. It is as though yawning is not just a reflex of the lungs, but a reflex of the heart. Some scientists believe contagious yawning is connected to the brain's mirror neurons. These are special cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else perform the same action. They are the biological root of imitation, of learning, of empathy. When you see someone smile, your own mirror neurons spark, nudging your lips to lift. When you see someone cry, your own heart feels heavy, echoing their sadness. And when you see someone yawn, those same circuits may be triggered, causing your own yawn to unfold. It is a silent form of communication, a way of saying, I feel what you feel, I share your state of mind. Interestingly, contagious yawning begins to appear in children around the age of 4 to 6, about the same time empathy itself becomes more developed. Before that age, children yawn often, but they do not catch yawns from others. Only once the social brain awakens does the mirrored yawn emerge. Even animals show this pattern. Chimpanzees, our close relatives, will often yawn in response to one another. Dogs, too, can catch yawns, not only from other dogs, but also from their human companions. If you yawn at your dog, you may see its jaw stretch open in reply. This suggests contagious yawning is a deep, ancient signal, linking creatures through empathy and shared states. So why does contagious yawning exist at all? What purpose could it serve? One idea is that yawning helps synchronize groups. Imagine a tribe of early humans resting together at night. If one person became drowsy and yawned, the yawn might ripple through the group, gently aligning everyone's states of alertness. This would help the group rest together or awaken together, moving as one body rather than many. In this way, yawning becomes a quiet social tool. It aligns rhythms, connects individuals, and spreads states of mind without words. Another theory is that yawning spreads alertness. If one member of a group yawned because their brain was cooling or resetting, others who yawn in response might also gain that refreshing effect. In dangerous environments, this can mean a group remains more alert together, less vulnerable to threats. But beyond survival, there is something poetic and contagious yawn. It reminds us that we are connected, that the body is not an isolated machine, but a part of a larger web of shared experience. That even something as simple as a breath, a stretch of the jaw, a sigh of air, can ripple across minds and hearts. And even now, as you listen, you may feel that gentle urge rising in you, a soft invitation to yawn, not because you are short of oxygen, not because you are desperate for air, but because you are sharing this moment, this rhythm, this quiet state. Perhaps even knowing that others around the world have yawned while listening to these same words makes the yawn feel deeper, more connected. A reminder that yawns are not solitary, but shared, that each yawn is a thread in the fabric of empathy, weaving us quietly together. So, the next time you see a yawn pass across a friend's face, or feel one stir inside you while hearing about it now, remember, it is not just a reflex, it is a bond, a silent sign of connection, carried on the breath, a whisper from one being to another, saying, we are in this together. The brain is a marvel of nature. a delicate organ, pulsing with electrical signals, processing thoughts, emotions, and memories. And yet, despite its elegance, it is also a furnace. Every time a neuron fires, every time thoughts are woven, every time signals race across the synapses, tiny amounts of heat are released. Though the brain makes up only about 2% of the body's mass, it consumes about 20% of its energy. That energy, like the warmth of a lantern, builds heat within the skull. Most of the body has ways to cool itself. Sweat on the skin, air flowing across the surface, blood carrying heat away. But the brain is enclosed, protected by bone, cushioned by fluid, sealed away from the breeze of the outside world. So, how does this organ stay at its perfect working temperature? One answer, whispered by biology, is yawning. Some scientists now believe yawning may act as a cooling mechanism for the brain, not a trivial reflex, but a vital act of balance, helping the mind remain sharp and stable. Imagine a computer running fast, working hard, generating heat. Without a fan to cool it, the circuits would overheat. Yawning, in this view, is like the fan of the brain, a way to draw in fresh air, stretch the jaw, increase blood flow, and release excess heat. So how does yawning actually cool the brain? The answer may lie in the mechanics of the breath and the movement of the jaw. When you yawn, you take in a deep, wide breath. This rush of cool air moves through the mouth and nasal passages, sweeping along delicate tissues, carrying away warmth. The sinuses and nasal cavity are particularly important here. Lined with thin blood vessels, they act as natural radiators. When cool air passes through, it lowers the temperature of the blood, which then flows directly to the brain. At the same time, the act of stretching the jaw during a yawn increases blood circulation in the head. Like opening a gate, it allows fresh blood to move more freely, carrying heat away and bringing oxygen-rich blood toward the brain. Even the movement of the facial muscles may play a role. When the jaw stretches wide, it activates muscles around the skull and face. This subtle shift can alter the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, the clear liquid that cushions and nourishes the brain. By stirring this fluid, yawning may help circulate it more efficiently, distributing heat and nutrients. Some researchers have even tested this theory directly. In experiments, it was found that people were more likely to yawn when ambient temperatures were slightly above comfortable, not too hot, not too cold, but in that narrow zone where the brain risks overheating. When the air is very cold, yawning is less frequent because the brain is already cool enough. When the air is very hot, yawning is less effective, and again it diminishes. But in that middle range, where cooling is needed, yawning flourishes. This pattern strongly suggests yawning is not about oxygen, as once believed, but about temperature, a natural, built-in fan, ensuring the brain runs smoothly, like a finely tuned engine. If yawning helps to cool the brain, then its purpose becomes clear. A cool brain is a sharper brain. Just as a machine runs more efficiently when it is kept at the right temperature, the mind works best when it is stable, calm, and not overheated. Think of those moments when you feel drowsy or foggy or overwhelmed. The mind seems heavy, thoughts slow, concentration drifts, a yawn slips through, and suddenly you feel a touch more awake, a little more present, a little clearer. This may be the brain resetting itself through cooling. Even animals reveal this secret. Birds, for example, yawn more frequently in the heat of summer than in the chill of winter. Rats have been observed yawning more when their brain temperatures rise. And humans, too, show patterns of yawning linked to environmental warmth. This cooling theory also explains why yawning often appears when we transition between states, from wakefulness to sleep, or from sleep back into wakefulness. These are moments when the brain shifts activity, when heat and circulation change, when balance must be restored. Yawning may act like a bridge, cooling and resetting the system during these delicate transitions. There is something soothing in this idea that yawning is not just an idle reflex, but a caretaker of the mind, a natural guardian, ensuring that the brain remains clear and steady, a quiet reminder that even the simplest actions can have profound importance. And so, when a yawn rises within you, instead of brushing it aside, you might imagine it as your brain taking a gentle breath of fresh air, a cool wind passing through the mind, sweeping away heat, restoring calm, preparing you for clarity. It is not laziness, not boredom, not weakness. It is your brain tending to itself, cooling, balancing, protecting. A quiet act of self-care, hidden in plain sight. Yawning is not unique to humans. It is a gesture written into the bodies of countless creatures across the natural world, from mammals to birds, from reptiles to even some fish. Yawning flows like a universal rhythm, a shared thread connecting life across species. Think for a moment of a dog, relaxed on a warm afternoon, stretching its jaw wide, a soft yawn escaping before curling back into rest. Or a cat, perched on a windowsill, sunlight warming its fur, yawning luxuriously as if savoring the simple act. These images are familiar, comforting, ordinary, and yet they carry profound meaning. Yawning appears in lions on the savannah, in chimpanzees deep within the forest, in horses, in elephants, in dolphins. Each species, with its own world, its own rhythms, its own survival needs, still shares this ancient behavior. It reminds us that yawning is not simply about culture or habit. It is biology at its core. The sight of an animal yawning often makes us smile. There is something tender in it, something that bridges the gap between us and them. It shows that the same invisible patterns that guide our bodies also guide theirs. That perhaps beneath the surface, the boundaries between human and animal are softer than we think. Scientists once wondered if yawning in animals meant the same as in humans. Was it about oxygen, about boredom, about tiredness? But as observations grew, patterns emerged, and one truth became clear. Yawning in animals is widespread, deeply ingrained, and serves multiple purposes, both social and physiological. In the animal kingdom, yawning is more than just a reflex. It is also a signal, a silent language written not in words, but in gestures. Among primates, yawning often carries social meaning. Chimpanzees, for instance, yawn not only when they are drowsy, but also when tension rises within their group. A yawn, in this context, may act as a calming gesture, a way of diffusing stress, signaling relaxation, reminding others to slow down. Baboons and macaques display yawns during social encounters, sometimes even exaggerated, showing their teeth in wide arcs. These yawns can be both peaceful and dominant, a way of communicating mood and intent. And then there is contagious yawning, something humans know well, but animals share too. When one chimpanzee yawns, others nearby are more likely to follow. This ripple of yawns may strengthen bonds, spreading a kind of shared state across the group, aligning their rhythms, building subtle unity. In lions, yawning is seen before coordinated movements. When a pride is resting, one lion yawns, then another, then another. Soon, they rise together, stretching and moving as one. Here, the yawn may act as a synchronizer, a signal that the group is about to shift from rest to action. Even in birds, yawning may have social threads. Parrots and budgerigars show contagious yawning in captivity, echoing the gestures of their companions. It is as if yawning carries a quiet empathy, a shared resonance between living beings. And so, across species, yawning is not just an inward act of the body, but an outward expression, a message, a bridge, a way of harmonizing with others. What makes yawning even more remarkable is its presence far beyond mammals. Reptiles, amphibians, and even fish have been observed yawning-like movements. Snakes, for example, often perform wide, slow gapes after eating. Though sometimes mistaken for simple jaw adjustment, these movements resemble yawning and may help regulate heat or circulation. Turtles and lizards yawn as well, sometimes in response to environmental changes, sometimes as part of their waking and resting cycles. Fish, too, have been noted to perform yawning-like gapes, though their reasons remain mysterious. Some researchers suggest it may relate to oxygen exchange, or perhaps to communication. And in birds, yawning is especially common. Owls, parrots, pigeons, many species perform yawns similar to ours. For nestlings, yawning may be linked to thermoregulation, helping young birds balance their developing systems. In adults, yawning sometimes spreads contagiously through flocks, echoing the patterns seen in mammals. All of this paints a picture of yawning as ancient, woven deep into the story of life, a reflex so fundamental that it has endured across millions of years of evolution, though its exact function may shift. Cooling the brain here, signaling there, synchronizing elsewhere, the gesture itself remains a timeless breath, a stretching of the jaw, a pause in the flow of being. It is humbling to think that when you yawn, you're echoing not only your fellow humans, but also dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, even fish, that this simple act ties you to the living web of earth. It is a gesture of kinship, one that whispers of unity across species. And perhaps, in this thought, there is comfort that yawning is not just yours alone, but ours collectively, a reminder that life, in all its forms, shares patterns too deep to be broken. You may have noticed, when someone nearby yawns, you feel the tug of a yawn rising within yourself. It slips in almost uninvited, spreading quietly from one person to another, like ripples on still water. This is known as contagious yawning, and though it may seem like a small curiosity, it is in fact a doorway into the mysteries of empathy. Studies have shown that humans are far more likely to catch a yawn from someone they know, a family member, a close friend, even a beloved pet, than from a stranger. It is as if yawning listens not only to the body, but also to the invisible threads of relationship. When we see another person yawn, our mirror neurons, special brain cells that fire both when we act and when we observe, may be at play. These neurons allow us to feel the shadow of another's action, to echo their state, to step gently into their experience. And in this way, contagious yawning may be more than imitation. It may be empathy, written in the language of breath and rhythm. Children under the age of 4 are often less susceptible to contagious yawning. And interestingly, those with certain conditions that affect social connection, such as autism, show differences in yawning contagion. This suggests that the phenomenon is deeply intertwined with our ability to feel and mirror the inner worlds of others. Imagine a quiet evening, sitting with friends. One person yawns, and another, then another. Soon, a wave passes through the group, uniting everyone in a shared, unspoken rhythm. This is empathy at its simplest, not words or analysis, but resonance, a shared state of being. Empathy is not only about understanding another's feelings. It is also about connection, about aligning with those around us. Yawning plays a subtle role here, weaving invisible threads between hearts. Research has shown that contagious yawning is most powerful among those who share close emotional ties. We are far more likely to catch a yawn from a sibling, a partner, or a close friend than from a distant acquaintance. And in this lies a hidden truth. Yawning may serve as a social glue, reinforcing bonds of trust and familiarity. In primates, this pattern appears as well. Chimpanzees are more likely to mirror the yawns of their companions than of strangers. Bonobos, our gentle cousins, also show yawning contagion tied to social closeness. Even dogs, those who have lived beside us for thousands of years, yawn in response to their human companions. When a dog sees its owner yawn, it too may respond, not simply out of reflex, but perhaps as an echo of emotional attunement. Some scientists believe yawning contagion is an ancient mechanism of group synchronization. If one member of a group is tired or shifting into a new state, the ripple of yawns may align the others, gently bringing them into harmony. Like an orchestra tuning before music begins, yawning sets a shared tempo, uniting individuals into a collective rhythm. And beyond coordination, there is tenderness here. For when we share a yawn, we share more than air. We share presence, awareness, and a quiet hum of togetherness. The bond between yawning and empathy open profound questions. Why does this simple gesture connect so deeply to the fabric of human relationships? Why do we yawn with those we love, but not always with those we barely know? Some believe it reflects the very roots of empathy, the capacity to feel with others, to mirror their states, to soften the barrier between self and other. Yawning contagion may not be about tiredness at all. It may be about presence, about attunement, about our brain's quiet reminder that we are not alone. When you see someone yawn, your body responds, not with calculation, but with resonance. It is as if your nervous system says, I feel you, I echo you, I am with you. And in this way, yawning reveals the deep social nature of our species, that even the simplest reflex can carry echoes of care and belonging. Think of the moments when you share a yawn with someone close. There is no effort, no thought, no spoken agreement. Yet, in that instant, you're aligned, breathing together, resting together, moving as one. It is a reminder that empathy is not always grand or complex. Sometimes, it is as quiet as a shared yawn under dim light, as gentle as two beings echoing each other's rhythm without a word. And perhaps this is why yawning feels both ordinary and sacred. It is a glimpse of how deeply connected we truly are, of how the boundaries of self can soften, dissolve, and blend into the presence of another. Yawning is often tied to sleepiness, but there's another side, one that emerges when a body is under strain. Have you noticed, before a stressful event, or during a moment of nervous anticipation, a yawn slipping in, sudden and deep? Pilots before takeoff, athletes before a race, even students waiting for an exam, all report yawning not because they are tired, but because they are tense. This kind of yawning carries a different rhythm, not the slow drift of drowsiness, but the sharp intake that accompanies heightened states. Scientists have observed yawning before competitive matches in animals too. For example, birds and primates sometimes yawn before territorial disputes. It is as if the body is preparing, adjusting its systems, balancing tension with a surge of oxygen and a wave of calm. Imagine a soldier standing before a mission, or a singer just before stepping onto the stage. A deep yawn may rise, uninvited but steady, a strange mixture of nerves and grounding. It seems the body whispers, breathe deeply, reset, prepare. Yawning in these moments is not a sign of weakness, but a way for the nervous system to regulate itself. It may lower a racing heart, cool an overactive brain, or shift the tension back into balance. The paradox is beautiful, that in stress, a gesture we often link with sleep can instead signal readiness, a bridge between calm and alertness, between inner pressure and outward focus. Stress and alertness are states of intensity. When the mind is strained, when thoughts run fast and the body hums with adrenaline, balance can be lost. Yawning, in this light, becomes a reset, a way of bringing the system back into rhythm. Some researchers suggest that yawning cools the brain, preventing overheating when stress or alertness drives activity too high. Just as a computer fan turns on when the machine works hard, the brain too may need its own cooling mechanism. And the stretch of the jaw, the deep breath, the rush of air may all serve to release the heat of tension. There is also evidence that yawning increases circulation, flushing the brain with oxygen-rich blood, clearing away the haze of stress and sharpening awareness. This is why people sometimes yawn before solving problems or in the middle of intense concentration. Think of a chess player sitting silently at the board, eyes narrowed in thought. Suddenly, a yawn escapes, long and quiet. The room may think they are tired, but in truth, their brain is simply refreshing, restoring clarity. In meditation practices, yawning is sometimes welcomed, even encouraged. It is seen not as distraction, but as release, as the body's natural way of settling into openness. The yawn allows tension to melt, the breath to deepen, and the mind to grow clear. And so, in moments of stress, yawning acts like a secret valve, opening, releasing, rebalancing, helping us remain both calm and awake, both soft and steady. At first glance, yawning seems a contradiction. How can it belong to both sleepiness and stress, to both calm and alertness? But perhaps it is not contradiction, but duality, a symbol of the body's wisdom, knowing when to soothe and when to sharpen. Before danger, a yawn may prime the senses. Before sleep, a yawn may ease us into rest. In each case, the gesture is the same, yet the meaning shifts with context. Athletes often describe yawning before performance as oddly grounding. It clears their nerves, steadies their focus, brings them into the present. In stressful moments, yawning becomes not a retreat but a preparation. Some researchers even propose that yawning evolved as a signal of transition, from calm to alertness, from stress to steadiness, from waking to sleep, always at the threshold, always guiding the body across invisible bridges. Picture a lion before the hunt. It yawns, not because it is tired, but because it is gathering itself. Muscles ready, senses sharp, breath deep. The yawn is the curtain rising, the body's cue that it is time. And in humans, the same may be true, that in stress and in alertness, yawning reminds us that even in intensity, there is breath, that even when the world feels overwhelming, the body carries its own secret rhythm, a rhythm that knows how to steady, how to balance, how to prepare. So, the next time a yawn comes in the middle of tension, remember, it may not be fatigue, it may be wisdom, the nervous system resetting itself, the brain aligning, the body whispering. Even after centuries of observation, yawning remains an enigma. We know it is ancient, found in fish, reptiles, birds, and mammals. We know it shapes itself across contexts, from fatigue to stress, from empathy to focus. And yet, its full purpose remains elusive, cloaked in mystery. Why does a gesture so universal, so familiar, resist complete explanation? Perhaps because yawning sits at the intersection of body and mind, of physiology and psychology. It is not simply breath, nor simply stretch, but something more, a bridge between states, a doorway between worlds. Philosophers have wondered whether yawning reflects the soul's rhythm. Scientists have traced its neural circuits, its chemicals, its social patterns. Artists have painted it as boredom, poets as longing, but in truth, it seems to carry all of these meanings and none completely. Think of it. In one moment, a baby yawns in the quiet of the night. In another, a soldier yawns before a battle. In another still, a friend yawns because you have the same motion, yet countless shades of meaning. Perhaps this is what makes yawning so mysterious, that it cannot be pinned to a single explanation. It remains fluid, adaptable, reflecting the complexity of human life itself. One of the most intriguing ways to see yawning is as a threshold, a gentle crossing point. Yawning arises at moments of transition, from wakefulness to sleep, from tension to calm, from isolation to connection. It is as if the body uses yawning to mark a shift, to tell us, you are moving now from one state into another. Consider twilight, that liminal hour between day and night. Just as the sky blends light and dark, yawning blends wakefulness and rest. It carries us across the invisible borderlands, soothing us through the change. In this sense, yawning feels less like an error of biology and more like a design of balance, a signal, subtle yet deep, reminding us that we are creatures of rhythm, that our lives unfold in cycles, of breath, of sleep, of energy, of time. And yawning is the quiet marker, the soft bell at each turning point. The mystery deepens when we realize how involuntary it is. We cannot summon a true yawn on command. We can mimic the motion, but the authentic sweep of a yawn comes only when the body calls. It reminds us that not everything is under control of the mind, that some wisdom lies deeper, below thought, in the quiet intelligence of the body. Perhaps that is why yawning feels so profound. It is both ordinary and otherworldly, both reflex and ritual, both science and mystery. Science thrives on questions, and yawning, though studied, still leaves its full story untold. Is it for cooling the brain, for bonding, for balance, for alertness? The answer, perhaps, is yes, and also not yet. The mystery itself is part of the beauty. To yawn is to join with every living creature that has ever done the same, from the fish in ancient seas, to the bird on its perch, to the friend sitting beside you, a gesture that binds life together across time, across species, across silence. There is comfort in not fully knowing, in letting the yawn remain a soft secret of the body. It reminds us that not everything must be solved, that some things are meant to be felt, experienced, trusted. And so, as we close our journey into the science of yawning, may you carry with you the sense of wonder it inspires, that something so simple, so everyday, can hold such depth, such mystery, such quiet beauty. If, as you listen now, a yawn gently rises within you, let it stretch, let it soothe, let it guide you toward rest. For yawning is not only science, not only reflex, but a lullaby of the body, a whisper that says it is time to soften, time to let go, time to rest. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams be calm, your heart at ease, and your breath steady. This has been the Bedtime Discoveries. And until we meet again, good night and goodbye.